welcome everybody to another episode of Veterinary Tales, where we tell the stories and hear the experiences of victims who have suffered from the few bad actors who would rather act irresponsibly than care for their patients. My name is Colleen. I am one of your hosts for this evening, and the other host I'm joined by is the wonderful Mr. Scott Fine. Scott, how are you?
Thank you so much, Colleen. Good evening. Hope all is well.
Yeah.
And our guest tonight is Sandy Isaacs, and she is going to tell the story of Roman and what happened. Hi, Sandy.
Hi, Scott. Hi, Colleen. Thanks for having me.
Sure.
Pleasure.
Just go right ahead whenever you're ready.
All righty. Well, Roman, I actually rescued him in September of 2019. I had saved his life, which was, I do rescue and animal advocacy. So Roman was 5. He was an 80-pound bully breed. I don't know exactly what he was, but so my intention, as I usually do, is to, rescue an animal, and I just do it independently. I'm not with a rescue or anything, but get them fully vetted, make sure they have no behavioral issues, and then find them a good home. Well, I'm no good at it, and I fell in love with him and ended up making him a permanent part of my home. So fast forward, I had him for 14 months, and I don't know, one day he started having, I noticed him and my female dog, they like to play. And one day he had like all these scratches and bruises on his belly. And I didn't recall my dogs getting rough to the point he should have any visible injuries. So I freaked out. This was September of 2020, so last year. And I took him to Wilson's emergency vet. It's out in Romeo. It's the only one I'm really even familiar with. I'd never been there, but I took him out there, and I actually saw the owner, Dr. John Wilson, and his reputation precedes him as being an exceptional vet. And the visit went very well. I felt Roman was in great hands, and Dr. Wilson suspected that he had ITP. I'm not going to even try to pronounce it, but so basically, it's, in my opinion, I think it's like the equivalent of kind of lupus, what humans get, but it was like the dog version. So it's kind of an immune system type response to where the dog's immune system starts attacking an otherwise healthy, tissue and whatnot. So they admitted him, and the treatment was going to be basically like steroids. They basically want to shut the immune system down, and it causes the body to start producing whatever. I'll spare you all the details. So long story short, after 4 days, he responded beautifully. Everything was back up normal. Let me just double check my notes here. Let me back up just 1 second here. So I think I mentioned Roman was 5. So prior to this, Roman was perfectly healthy, had no other known health issues. And in the case where I rescued him, I was getting him from the family that had him since a puppy. So I did know, in this rescue situation, I did know his prior health history. He had no other past history of any health issues. And in the 14 months I had him, he was, well taken care of. He was up to date on shots. He was on monthly heartworm preventative, all that good stuff, up to date on vaccines and whatnot. So we had no other health issues. Okay, back to the hospitalization. So 4 days, he responded perfect to the treatment. Dr. Wilson was like, yeah, we're good. So the prognosis was he should have went on and lived a, perfectly normal life. And basically what they do is, he was going to continue on these steroids for, I would continue treating him at home. And, I'd come back in maybe a few weeks or so and see how he's responding, and eventually taper him off and then go on life as usual. So I brought him home, and, he was doing fine. And they told me to go ahead and schedule a follow-up visit. And they said, I think they said 2 to 4 weeks. So I figured, well, I'm thinking I'll do the longer of the two so they have a better idea of how he's doing. So I did 4 weeks, scheduled it for, I think, Halloween. Oh, wait, hold on. I'm getting ahead of myself. I probably should look at my notes. So, okay, let me back up. They wanted to see him back in 7 to 10 days. So that's where it is. So I scheduled an appointment with, whoever. So wasn't a patient there. So I'd never been there. I just scheduled with whoever happened to have that appointment in whatever it was, 10 days, which happened to be Dr. Sarah Monzo. Never met her. I wasn't familiar, but she had the appointment available. So that was on October 3rd. I took Roman to see her, and she did some blood work to see how he's responding to his meds. And she said to come back for a blood work recheck in 2 to 4 weeks. So that's where I said, I'll do the 4 weeks. So that way they have a longer period of time to, see how he's doing. So that appointment was scheduled for Halloween, October 31st. So on the 5th, Dr. Monzo had called me, gave me the results of his blood work. She said all his blood platelets were within the normal range, which is good. That means meds are working. She said she wanted to see him back in 2 to 4 weeks. I let her know I already had the appointment on the book. She said, good. Just continue him on his meds, current dose. She ordered a refill at the same dose. Good to go. Okay, so 2 weeks later, I started noticing Roman was having some issues. I noticed like he was starting to pant a little bit. He was starting to lose like muscle loss kind of around his like head and like along his spine, and he seemed a little weak. Now I'm familiar with prednisone, which is a steroid that can cause that. But the vet had assured me, if you have any questions, any concerns, give us a call. I wasn't too terribly concerned at that time, but I did, because I'm a little ridiculous with my dogs. So I did call, and I called several times actually, just to check. And they every time I called, the vet, whoever answered, would say, is he still eating? I'm like, yeah, like a horse. Well, prednisone, any kind of steroid generally increases appetite in animals, and humans, but that was, just their answer. So I trusted that they knew what they were talking about. I didn't worry. So anyway, the symptoms continued to worsen though. The muscle loss, he looked like he was melting away. And I, kind of my gut was saying something's not right. The panting was getting worse. And then by the end of October, he was getting really weak. And then by that point, then his stomach started bloating. And I was like, okay, something's wrong. I had called them. I think I have a total of, I made a total of 34 calls between the first hospital visit and then this date here. That's how ridiculous I am. But anyway, I wanted to make sure everything's okay. And so it was like, I'm just going to take him in, I'd rather be safe than sorry. So I'm a night owl, and it was about 1 a.m. I called up there and I was adamant. I said, look, I know you guys told me not to worry. I said, but I really think something's wrong. And I explained, I said, I'm familiar with the prednisone side effects. I said, but I feel like something's wrong. Seems beyond that. Now the vet was in surgery. So the girl that answered the phone went and checked with the vet tech that was on duty. They asked me, are his gums still pink? I said, yes. They said, is he still eating? And I'm like, yes. They said, well, since you have your follow-up appointment in 2 days, I wouldn't worry about it. Just address these issues with the vet at that appointment. And I just was like, I don't know. My gut was like, I don't know. But I'm again trusting that what they're telling me is, good information. So, so I went ahead, I went to sleep. I was working remotely during the pandemic. So, I did my shift. And like at 2:30 when I was done, I took him out to go potty, and he seemed disoriented. He could barely get up the stairs. I'm like, you know what? I don't care what they say. I'm taking him in. So I gave him a call to the hospital. It's out in Romeo, so it's quite a drive for me. I let him know I'm bringing him in. I drive him out there. I let him pee when we get there, and the vet tech comes running out and goes, "Is that Roman?" And I was kind of mad. I'm like, "Gosh, can I let my dog pee? You know, it's a long ride." And I'm like, "Yeah." And she's like, "You need to get him in here now." And she goes, "He's got stomach bloating, and that is emergent." And I'm thinking, okay, this is one of the things I called about last night, and it didn't seem to be a concern then. Okay, so we have 15 hours between when I called at 1:12, and then I think I arrived, it was 4:20 when I got there then the following day. And the vet tech was very concerned. She's like, "We need to get him back in triage. We need to run vitals. We need to do an x-ray," because again, stomach bloating can, be life or death. So I'm more upset now and concerned. So they rush him back, do their thing, take him back and do that stuff. Okay, so let me back up on my notes here. Okay, so they do all that, and then I'm in the waiting, or in a room waiting for the doctor on staff to come in. And okay, so she came in, the doctor, and this is Dr. Kristen Donovan. She tells me that she suspected that he had developed, and I probably will botch the pronunciation, but iatrogenic Cushing's disease due to the long-term high dose of steroids. Test results showed he had an enlarged liver, elevated liver enzymes, and anemia. She also suspected aspiration pneumonia. Okay, so aspiration pneumonia, I believe, is where they can inhale, I don't know, they can inhale some kind of liquid from drinking or vomiting or something. I don't know, because he didn't vomit, and I don't know how or where that could have happened, but anyway. She went on to tell me that there are vets who specialize in immune diseases and that Wilson's only provide emergency care. Now, I felt like she was being a little condescending to me. Like, why are you bringing him here for this emergency, like life-threatening condition? I could have been wrong. I don't know what her feelings were, but that was the feeling I felt. Like, there's, specialists out here for that. We're just here to provide emergency care. But maybe she didn't know that he had already previously been there and was under their care. I don't know, but I didn't like the way I would, felt she was talking to me about this. But I was thinking, had I known there was a specialist and I could have taken him elsewhere, by all means, I would have. But I was following the instructions I was told. Like, we want you to bring him back for this follow-up. Okay, bring him back again for this follow-up. I was doing as I was instructed, and I've never had an animal fall ill like that or require emergency care. So I'm, again, just trusting what the doctors are telling me, and just following their instructions. So at any rate, so also with this doctor, I had complained to her about and the front desk that evening that I complained about the lack of concern from the staff, as well as the non-responsiveness to my calls. As I said, I had made 34 calls in total between his first hospitalization on September 18th, prior to that visit and that would be October 29th. It just seemed, I felt like, I wasn't getting answers or return calls or getting blown off. And I was very upset. I felt like I shouldn't have been there that night, and he should not have, deteriorated like that. At any rate, I expressed my disappointment with that. The girl at the front desk told me they note the patient's records every time the owner calls with any concerns, noting the specific concerns, the name of the staff member they spoke with, etc. However, I later learned this was not true, and they don't do that. It just depends on the nature of the call and other factors. Okay, I learned that later on with some of my investigating. Okay, so I complained to that doctor that evening with that, and she assured me that I could call her anytime with any questions or concerns. Even sitting in the office staff would direct my call to her cell phone if she wasn't there. Well, when I got home that evening after, leaving Roman there, he was admitted again, of course. I left her a very detailed message, 4 minutes plus long, with information I thought might be helpful to her regarding his possible aspiration pneumonia, and asked her to call me back ASAP. So mind you, this would be 8 hours after he was admitted, 8 hours before his death. She never returned my call to this day. Okay, that's just a side note. Okay, so they admitted him. We're going to give him antibiotics, IV, taper down the steroids, whatever. Next morning, 8:15, October 30th. So I get a call from a different vet there. She tells me Roman's heart stopped. We've begun administering CPR. The other doctor's in there working on him now. What do you want us to do? Okay, so I just started my work shift here at home. I'm not going to say what I thought because we're being nice. And I'm thinking, you're the doctor. I save his life, I guess, would be probably the first thing I'd suggest you try. And I did sign a CPR authorization there. Now, mind you, at the first visit, they didn't have me sign anything about any type of thing. So I thought that was interesting. But so I told her, as in shock and devastated as I was at that moment, I told her very calmly and kindly, I said, I've never been in the situation. I asked her what the normal protocol was. She said they usually do CPR for 5 to 10 minutes. And after that, do I want them to continue trying to revive him? Now, I know how brutal CPR is and what awful shape he was in. And as much as I didn't want to lose that sweet boy, I also didn't want them to, continue, doing that to him. So I told her, if you cannot revive him with the normal 5 to 10 minute CPR efforts, not to continue. So, we hung up. I lost it. I started bawling and, whatever, start crying. And I just started praying. I said, if it's God's will to take my boy home, just don't let him suffer, take him peacefully. I didn't want to lose him. Believe me. I was praying for a miracle, but I also didn't want him to suffer. And, he'd been such a faithful companion, such a good dog, such a good boy. To my family and I, best dog I've ever had. Sorry, Rue, no offense, but just I was so blessed with him that he deserved peace, if nothing else, especially after all that unnecessary suffering he had gone through those last several weeks. So whatever. Anyway, so 10 minutes later, the same doctor calls back. She says they managed to revive him. I'm like, thank you, Jesus. Yes, Lord bless me with a miracle. Then she finishes her sentence and says, but he's gone. So talk about a roller coaster there from praise God to, oh Lord, no, God, please, why? She says she's very sorry for my loss. Then she promptly, very quickly tells me she'll transfer me to the front desk so I can take care of my final bill and cremation wishes. Okay, that was just way too much all in one. I wish they would have waited, but neither here nor there. And I thought that was a little rushed because, I'd already paid them $1,800 by that point. I paid a $600 deposit the night before when I brought them in. I mean, I only owed them $130 at that point. That was the balance I owed them. So that was awful. But, just to back up, the CBC blood work, I'm so sorry. I wish I knew how to disable notifications here. So like the CBC blood work results from the emergency hospital visit that night, both upon his admission and an hour before his death, showed that ITP, which was his original diagnosis, all was fully controlled and stable, and his platelet count was in the normal range. I made 16 calls after his death trying to get answers or address my complaints, most of which were forwarded to a different person or a different department. where I was connected to voicemail and I left very detailed messages. To this day, never have been returned. And then it took several calls until I finally connected with the owner, Dr. John Wilson, who, like I said, his reputation precedes him. I've always heard nothing but amazing things about him. And like I said, his care for Roman was outstanding. I have no complaints about the care he gave to him, initially. At any rate, we talked for over an hour. And he confirmed what I expected, that Dr. Monzo had made a mistake. He stated that 4 weeks was way too long for Roman to be on that high dose of steroids. He stated that Dr. Monzo should have had him return in 2 weeks, not 4, to start tapering down that dose. He apologized and said he would talk to her about this. I asked him many questions, and he was very straightforward with me, which I appreciated. One of which I asked him straightforward. I said, had your staff done their job properly and instructed me to bring him in the night before at 1 in the morning, as they should have, when I called about the stomach bloating and other issues 15 hours earlier, would Roman have lived? And he said, probably, because they could have started weaning him off the high dose of steroids and started him on antibiotics via IV that much sooner. So he neither here nor there. So, and again, I have tons of records of, I called to talk to the woman that's, in charge of complaints, the human resource manager, left her a very detailed message. She never returned my call to this date, all these details. But the long and short of it is I did file a complaint with the state board, the veterinary. In Michigan, it's through LAR, it's the licensing and regulation, something or other, but it's the Michigan State Board of Veterinary Medicine. I did file a complaint with them. And when I talked to the investigator, she was awesome. And she said that it was good that they ruled, to agree to open an investigation. That in and of itself was kind of a small victory. They said that if nothing else, even if they did not find any, whatever wrongdoing on the doctor's part, that she would forever have a death investigation on her license. And I thought, you know what, that's better than nothing, because my dog is gone forever. So it's almost not quite fair, but it's something. So whatever. And then in June this year, I got a letter back from the what are they called? I don't know, whatever. Basically, the letter stated that there's not a reasonable basis to believe that a violation of the applicable provisions of the Public Health Code and associated rules has occurred. So that was a real punch in the gut.
Sandy, who is that from?
That would be from, in Michigan here, it's the, LARA is kind of the whole governing agency of Michigan for anyone that carries a license. So that includes, hair salons, massage therapists, veterinarians, and then each, I guess, industry has its own then board, I guess, if you will, that consists of, I'm assuming, let's see, State of Michigan, Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs. I have the letter right here. So the gentleman that authored the letter, John Campbell, Director, Investigations and Inspections Division, Bureau of Professional Licensing.
Is there an actual board of veterinary medicine?
Well, that was my understanding, is how that worked, is that each, I thought that's how it worked. Maybe I'm wrong, but maybe it isn't. Maybe it's all kind of one conglomerate. So I thought it was a panel of veterinarians. So I may have to do a little research, because I just mentally, this losing Roman, I mean, it just, I didn't even submit my story to the books. I had started drafting the story for the first volume, and I just couldn't. I talking about it tonight, I'm doing much better, for this, because I know I need to talk about it to help others, but I just couldn't. When I sat down and just started thinking about it, it triggered me too bad. I mean, the effect it had on me was far beyond the grief of losing a pet. I mean, I've lost pets, my companion animals before. This was a whole different ball game, and I had to reach out for emergency mental health care. I mean, the anxiety, and I know, Scott, I'm preaching to the choir because you know all too well, you've lived it losing Joey, but the PTSD, and some people might think that's ridiculous, but the thing, like with my own situation, is that, doing animal rescue and animal, mostly mine is bully breed stuff, but I live, eat, and breathe this stuff. I fight and save animals' lives. I saved that dog's life. And then 14 months later, I feel that, I feel like, his death was preventable. He shouldn't have died. And I feel like I was robbed of him, the very life that I saved, just boom, unnecessarily taken from me. And I don't know, I don't really have words for that, but it messed me up. Like, I mean, I can't explain. It's hard to put in words, but
We all understand, those of us that have been through it. And I presume Roman was the first loss as a result of veterinary negligence or malpractice. Is that right?
yeah, like,
Your other companion animals passed as a result of natural causes or injury or something other than
yeah,
that?
I've never, well, no, I take that back. I've never had any veterinary malpractice or any kind of negligence. I've had cats that, I had one other dog, and actually his was a freak accident. I had an 8-year-old dog, Jake, that I rescued, and he actually died to pet suffocation. He died on a cat food bag, and that was something I had never heard of. That was back in 2015, and that messed us up too, my daughters and I. And so I went on a huge thing to advocate for that, because a lot of people, it's something they never heard of. And in his 8 years, that was something he never did. He never messed with our pet food.
Right.
And the one time he did was his last time. So yeah, but no, I never had an animal, thank God, fall ill, other than the normal,
Other than we're sorry for your loss, let me transfer you to the front desk so you can take care of your bill. Garbage. How did they treat you, if there was any interaction after that?
The only thing, I think I received a sympathy card, from the hospital with some of the veterinarian signatures. It wasn't, the Dr. Monzo didn't sign it. I think it was the vets that were on duty the day he passed. Not the owner, but that was it. In fact, I received the card the same day I received my receipt for the final invoice, the same day. That was it, and then the owner, Dr. Wilson, he did say he was sorry in our 1-hour conversation. Oops, sorry. And he did, obviously spend an hour on the phone, which I did appreciate. And he did, he took the time to do that, which he's a very busy guy. I do appreciate that.
I think it's mandatory.
I'm sorry.
I think it's mandatory. I don't think it matters. I mean, to me, I don't care how busy the practitioner is. When something like that happens, they have to make time to contact you and express their condolences.
Well, I had to go through HELL to get a hold of him too. It wasn't something he did on his own accord. I left several messages, but nonetheless, right. I finally did connect. But not that this, I mean, honestly, like, they never offered any kind of a refund or reimbursement or anything. And okay, in a way, it's probably good they didn't, because I probably would have lost my mind. I would have probably taken that as an insult, to be honest, because there's no comparison and no dollar amount could replace Roman. I guess, like I said, it's probably better they didn't, but there was no offer of, we're really sorry. How can we make this up to you? What can we do? At least offering me, what can we do? I'm so sorry. And I never heard from Dr. Monzo, and then I try to think of it from a business standpoint, a legal standpoint. If you apologize, that's, admitting wrongdoing, and that's admitting, something. So maybe that's why, but I never heard from her. Okay. And if I had heard from her personally, that would have made a world of difference. Because you know what? I am a very understanding person and a very forgiving person. And as far as my own healing, she was only 4 months out of veterinary school when she treated Roman, which I didn't know until later. And not that she didn't deserve, to be working and seeing Roman. I have my own thoughts on new veterinarians right out of school. Maybe they should have some more supervision, or,
Absolutely.
I have a whole different article I wrote on that, but, we all got to learn and start somewhere. Absolutely. But maybe some supervision and overlook meds they're writing. But, and to back up to, just in the process of his hospitalization, at no time when he was discharged from the hospital, those 4 days when, not the second time when he died, but the 4 days when he got his medication, I'm thinking of like a human experience when you leave the hospital. And since I've had no other animals in ER, care or hospitalized, I have nothing other to compare it to than a human experience. But when they gave me his prescriptions, the only information I was given about the medication was that one of the medications, I had to wear latex gloves because it was such a strong immune suppressing drug that if I were to touch it myself, it would mess up my own immune system. That was the only thing I was told. But anytime I've been, even to just a doctor's appointment and some new medication is given, I'm given all kinds of information of, here's side effects. If you experience this, call your practitioner. Here's what you look out for, blah, 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 blah. Nothing of the sort of any, side effects of prednisone or the other medication, this, that, and the other. And then, I wish they would have. I had to call the hospital and ask them for information on the medication, and of course, Dr. Google, WebMD or, whatever. But I had to call several times to get information on the medication he was given. And at one point, a really nice, I don't know who, vet tech, emailed me a couple PDFs on the 2 medications that he was taking. He also came home with kennel cough. They told me it wasn't kennel cough, but he came home 2 days later. My female dog started up with it. So at any rate, that's, like I said, and I also didn't sign a CPR authorization at the first hospitalization, just a lot of things that were overlooked that, so what can viewers take away from this? Things I wished I would have known. Ask questions. If your dog, you go to the vet, any vet, especially when you're in an emergency situation, you're frightened, you're scared, you're stressed, you're worried. So you're not even probably thinking straight, but follow your gut. Okay. I don't care if you're in doubt, better to be safe than sorry. So now I have guilt. I have so much guilt with kicking myself that night at 1 a.m. If I would have taken him. Now, granted, I put my trust into the veterinary industry in that hospital. They assured me that if I had questions, concerns, and I called, that, they'd ask me the right questions to indicate whether I should or shouldn't bring him in. But so what? I don't care. You know what? They're not doctors, you know, that answer the phone and whatever. Better to be safe than sorry. I should have just drove him in or even taken him somewhere else, emergency hospital, but I didn't. I trusted someone else that I believed, you know, had my dog's best interests, you know, or knew. I trusted what they were telling me was good medical sound advice, you know, but it wasn't. I mean, the owner told me. So, you know, and when you call, demand to speak to a doctor. I mean, if your animal's in a hospital or being treated where they keep them and you call for an update or you have a question, don't just talk to the person that answers the phone, demand to speak to a doctor. Even if you have to wait for a call back, because like I said, they're not doctors that are answering the phone, you know, and if your gut's telling you something's not right, you got to trust it. Even if you're wrong, I don't care.
Yeah.
Better to be just, like I said, better be safe than sorry, you know, and when you get meds, ask them about the meds, ask them about the dosing, ask them for literature and pamphlets on those meds, and then go and do the research on the meds from reliable, trustworthy sources, including the doses for specific ailments, because some medications are, you know, used for different things. Make sure it's the proper dosing for the weight of your animal. Check for medication, you know, any certain health issues animals have that cannot take certain medications, you know, or medications that can't be taken together. I mean, I can go on and on, but you're getting the idea.
Yeah.
And before you schedule an appointment, last thing, before you schedule your appointment, let's say you're just looking for a new vet or whatever, do word of mouth. Don't go in the yellow pages and Google. Go to word of mouth. Something that important. You want to know somebody who firsthand has been seeing a veterinarian. You don't want to trust your animal's life with just some Yahoo who paid to have a listing in the yellow pages. And ask the questions. And if they love animals as much as, you know, most good veterinarians do, they're not going to be offended by the questions or threatened by them. Find out the school of veterinary medicine they graduated from. How long have they been practicing? What areas do they specialize in? And you know what? Any vet practice, research the Google reviews. Okay, you know what? I did this on Wilson's Veterinary Hospital before I took Roman in. Okay, and there are a ton of bad reviews. That place, okay, and I'll never say that place killed my dog, because we know that's totally defamation. I'm not going to say they killed my dog, because that wouldn't be an accurate statement. And you know, when I read all those comments, just on and pages, I went back to 2018 on those horrible reviews, and I had to stop because I was sick to my stomach. And you know what? I made the assumption that those are just people that unfortunately lost their pet, and that was just their grief response was to blame somebody, right? That's my assumption. Now, after I've had that experience there, I'm not so sure. Definitely needs some investigation, and check if the vet has any complaints through. Now in Michigan, it would be through the licensing, LARA, which is the Michigan, whatever I just said, Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs. You can verify a license, make sure they don't have any complaints, make sure they even have a license and it's up to date. Educate yourself as much as you can, because your animal's life depends on it.
It really does. That's right. It really does. Thank you, Sandy. We appreciate your time, and thank you for being so forthcoming. Colleen, did you have any final thoughts? You're welcome. Do you have any final thoughts?
I appreciate this opportunity to share Roman's story, because it's the first time I have. So since I couldn't do it for the book, I appreciate the opportunity to do it here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for, you know, taking in so many rescues and for all the advocacy that you do. So we appreciate your hard work and sharing your story and Roman.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
All right, so I guess we'll see you again in 2 weeks for another Veterinary Tales.
Absolutely.
And don't forget, next Sunday night, Joey's Legacy Roundtable with Massachusetts Animal Attorney Jeremy Cohn and a guest to be named later. because we had a little disruption with one of our vets in terms of his need to be away for a month or so. So we'll have a surprise guest for you. I'm sure it'll be someone that'll provide some very good information like all of our guests do. All right, I guess we'll see you next time, and say goodnight.
Take care.
Good night, guys.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye.